get started. We were all just talking about our favorite places on campus. So if you visited and you already have a favorite place, drop that in chat. We'd love to hear. And maybe we'll end up circling back to that conversation later. But first, we want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. This is Northwestern's CollegeSide Chat panel discussion. We want to make sure everyone is safe and healthy and taking care of yourselves. We know this is a really challenging time to make this decision, but we hope that you all are putting your mental health first. This is affecting communities around the world, and we really, really do empathize with you because this is already an anxious transition and a very difficult decision that we know impacts your life for the rest of it. So we hope we can help in any way.
And we hope this fireside chat will provide you a glimpse into life at Northwestern and an opportunity to hear about our panelists' stories and experiences. That way you can get to know the Northwestern community as best as you can. This discussion will be about an hour long. The first half will be the panel answering previously submitted questions, while the second half will be an open discussion for you guys.
So if you don't mind, we encourage you all to turn on your cameras so that we can see you and it feels a little bit more personal, but please only do so if you consent to being recorded, because this will be uploaded on YouTube so that other students can watch and refer back to it. We'll kick things off with introductions. We'll have each of our panelists introduce themselves with your names, your pronouns, your hometowns, your years, your majors, and the first thing that you're gonna do when quarantine is over. If you need me to go over that list one more time, just ask. I'll start. I'm Joey Safchik, she, her, hers. I'm from Los Angeles. That's where I am currently. I'm a junior. I'm studying journalism and international studies with a minor in poli-sci. And the first thing I'm gonna do when quarantine is over, I live fairly close to the beach, but it's been off limits for a while. So when it's safe, I'm going to go to the beach. A lot of people are doing that now, and I don't think that's a great idea at this time, but when I can, I'm gonna do that.
Hey, hi, I'm Shaylin. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a senior, about to graduate in like 6 weeks. And I am a communication studies and English literature major with a certificate in integrated marketing communications. I am from a small town in Minnesota, which is called Big Lake. And the first thing I'm gonna do when quarantine is over is get myself to the first sports game that is happening, and I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that it's baseball. Not looking too likely, so if it has to be college football, that's also fine. We can make it work.
Hi, I'm Alyssa. I use she, her, hers. I'm from Las Vegas, which is where I am currently. I'm a senior studying journalism, poli-sci, with a minor in gender and sexuality studies. And I think that's everything. And the first thing that I'm going to do when the quarantine is over is drive or fly back to Evanston so that I can see my friends before we all move to separate places after graduation.
Hi, I'm Emmy. I use she, her, hers. I'm from Barrington, Illinois, which is a suburb about 45 minutes away from Evanston. I'm a senior studying political science with a minor in Middle Eastern studies and legal studies. And the first thing I will do is probably drive to Portillo's with my friends and get lots of hot dogs.
Right. Hey guys, my name is Cecilia. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Northern Arizona. I'm a sophomore in McCormick School of Engineering. So if you have any questions about engineering, I'd be happy to answer that. Specifically, I'm studying computer science with a minor in math, potentially turning that into a double major. And when the quarantine is over, honestly, probably go back to Evanston and see my friends too.
Hi all, I'm Bree. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm a sophomore majoring in psychology and communication studies from Rainham, Massachusetts. And then I guess when quarantine's over, I'd really love to go to Chipotle. Really missing it.
I'm Allison. I am a junior. I use she, her pronouns. I am from the western suburbs of Chicago, but I was in Ghana when the quarantine hit, and so was called back. I'm studying political science and African studies. I swear that it's not this heavy political science at school. It just happens to be that a lot of the people on the panel And first thing I'm looking forward to do when quarantine is over is trying to book a flight back to Ghana to do senior thesis research.
Hi everyone. So I'm Mirage and I am a sophomore and I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm actually right next to Barrington, the neighboring town over in Schaumburg. And so that's about 45, 50 minutes away from campus. And I'm majoring in neuroscience and minoring in Spanish on the pre-med track. So if you guys have questions about that, I'd be more than happy to answer those. And also once quarantine is over, I'll take Joey up on her offer to finally go kayaking in Evanston.
Yeah, one of the underrated perks of going to Northwestern, you can kayak when it's nice enough. The lake is at your disposal and you can rent kayaks right on campus. So glad we all know that now. So I believe all the panelists have gotten a chance to introduce themselves. If you haven't, feel free to jump in. But now that we've got a glimpse of who all of the panelists are and who you'll be talking to and who you might want to target questions to, we're going to jump in with the questions that were submitted on the Google form. So the first question is, how have you changed the most in college, and how has Northwestern influenced that change? And we're going to start with Shaylin.
All right, yay, okay. I was super excited about this question because I feel like I'm actually an entirely different person than when I started college, which it's been 4 years, so it makes sense. But I think Northwestern has definitely influenced a ton of that change, mostly just by like providing me people that have helped me like become a different, better version of myself, but also I think one of like the biggest ways I've changed is in like how I deal with like problems and approaching things. Like a lot of people from Northwestern, I kind of entered freshman year like used to being kind of at the top of the pack. Like I said, I come from a small town, so I was kind of used to being like in the top 5 in like academics, and like I usually when I applied for things like was pretty confident I was going to get it. And Northwestern, like everyone is so impressive all the time. I like had to learn very quickly how to deal with like failure and rejection, which was great for me because it really like taught me how like to best prepare myself for situations and like interviews, such as now I'm going into the job market. I feel definitely more prepared now to like talk about myself and leverage my best like qualities and experiences, whereas in high school I was just kind of like skating by because I knew that based on just like my like resume in high school I could kind of like get where I wanted to be. Now definitely Northwestern, because I'm surrounded by people who are like just as talented, just as smart, oftentimes smarter than me, more talented than me, really taught me how to like approach situations, deal with failure, leverage my best qualities, things like that.
Awesome. Alyssa?
Yeah, so similar to Shaylin, I think the most important part of how Northwestern has changed me has really been from the people that I've met, like the friends and the community it's created. Obviously, going to college in general is going to be challenging academically, but I have really found that I've grown as a person, whether it's like in my political beliefs or just like my personal morals and what like I understand in the world, is come from like being around people who are so passionate and who are constantly having a critical eye. I feel like for institutions that surround us, that comes in part from sometimes being critical of the institution that is Northwestern, but also just constantly trying to learn together. And I don't know, that even includes just like following a bunch of people on Twitter who I admire from Northwestern, who have taught me a lot about things that I just didn't have personal experience with. And so I think having that passionate community has really changed me for the better.
And I'll jump in here. Those are both such thoughtful answers, and I echo all of those sentiments. I also think for me personally, I came into Northwestern knowing what I wanted to do, but I also had a lot of varying interests. And I think being at Northwestern and being surrounded by people who were so dedicated and committed and motivated made me so confident in my chosen career path and in my chosen major. And I've been able to really narrow my focus, which I think for me personally was what I wanted to do in college. And I've really found the one thing that I am so passionate about. And obviously it's because of the professors and my peers and the institution that is the Medill School of Journalism that I've been able to discover that and build the foundation so that I really feel certain of who I am as a journalist, who I am as a student, who I am as a person. So I think allowing me to really narrow that down and focus in on that has been the best thing the school could offer me.
Those are all awesome answers, and I mean, those are very, very true. And so the next question is, describe Northwestern student culture and academic climate, and we're going to start with Alyssa.
So the reason that I chose this question is because I think, at least my interpretation of Northwestern's culture, obviously can't compare this to other schools because I haven't attended, is that it really emphasizes extracurricular involvement, in that sometimes to a degree of problem where people are very over involved. But it also, I found that in my experience at Northwestern, my favorite memories have come from being involved with different student organizations, whether it's like community service ones or ones related to my own major in journalism, like publications and stuff. And so I think that aspect of the culture allows people to experience things that are not necessarily related to the area of study and get involved with hopefully groups that aren't just professional oriented, but are also like personal oriented. Like I'm involved with this food insecurity organization, and I'm not planning on like spending the rest of my life working on food insecurity, but it's something I care about, and it's where I've met some of my closest friends. So things like that I think are really nice.
Yeah, I'm going to continue off. I'm going to speak a lot from more of an engineering perspective. So I remember when I came to Northwestern, I was pretty scared that there would be a lot of cheating, a lot of people, I guess, backstabbing each other, but I've never experienced that at all here, which I've been super grateful for. At least in all my engineering classes, I felt like all my peers have been super helpful, super collaborative, and I'm never afraid to ask anyone for help when I need to. And I've made a lot of really good friends through my classes, and I'm also going to echo what Alyssa said. I feel like a lot of student culture on campus is surrounded within the extracurriculars, and I've also personally met a lot of my friends through the clubs I'm in, and it's really a great way to expose yourself to different things. So I mean, personally, I'm in the robotics club. I'm an engineer. It's what I love to do, but I'm also involved in one of the dance groups on campus, which is not something I planned to do when I came to Northwestern, but it's something I've grew to love, and I've met a lot of friends through that. So
Yeah, I definitely echo both of those points. I mean, I think Northwestern is definitely very much like a work hard, play hard type of environment. As far as the work goes, I was pre-med my freshman year. And actually, it's funny because I took a lot of classes with Mirage, and he was in my PA group, which is essentially like your orientation group. You spend a week with them in the beginning of the school year. And so like me, Mirage, and a bunch of other people in our PA group were all like majoring in like neuroscience, biology, whatever. Like we would all meet up, like we're always working on chemistry problems, and it was just like a really collaborative time. Whereas like I guess when I applied to Northwestern, I thought it would be like really like cutthroat, like everybody's in the library 24/7, like we don't, that's all we do is school. But that's really not the case. People do like to have a good time, like do extracurriculars, get involved with something new. And I think it's like a really good balance, which I was kind of like surprised about coming to Northwestern.
Those are all awesome answers. Oh, I'm sorry, Joey. That's my bad.
You're totally fine. I agree that those are all awesome answers. And this next question I'm going to ask with the caveat that this will be different for everyone depending on your major and which school you're in. And we say that we mean, are you in Medill? Are you in Weinberg? Are you in McCormick? Because they all have different requirements, not only for your first year classes, but for your distribution, which is sort of like gen ed. So you want to know what we recommend for choosing courses for the first semester, focusing on the breadth of requirements, or going into the classes that are important for your selected major. So we'll start with Allison, but if you have a particular major in mind and one of us fits that, feel free to ask that personally.
Totally. I think Joey proves an excellent point about that we all have different areas of expertise, and really feel free to reach out because we're happy to talk about it. And so as Joey mentioned, that the different schools, I'm in Weinberg, which is the Arts and Sciences College, and they have wide distribution requirements like fine arts, math related more stuff, ethics, literature. You can look it up online. I'm sorry, I can't completely remember them. I took calculus my freshman first quarter, did not need to take it. I realize now, thought I had to, got a C. C's get degrees. However, I don't recommend, you could take learn that you will be able to talk to your counselors and be very adamant about if it's not something you want to do, don't take it. You don't have to. I got math. I took a statistics class that was so great, super easy. I don't want to say easy, but yeah. And that also fulfilled the same requirement. And then I would say though, for your major, those that you have to do of 200s classes, especially like in poli-sci, take your 200s early if you can. That way you get them out of the way. I took a 200 this fall and was the one of like 3 juniors with a whole bunch of freshmen. And so that just makes it hard in terms of connection and where you are in your collegiate career and thinking, because thinking about where your thought process was 2 years earlier is hard. Yeah, and Cecilia.
All right, yeah. So I'm going to have a very different answer because I'm in McCormick, which is the School of Engineering. So McCormick it's definitely a much more structured curriculum. You definitely get to explore, but at least your freshman year, I felt like a lot of people were definitely taking a lot of the same classes. So I won't spend too much time on this, but some of the freshman requirements when you're in McCormick is something called engineering analysis, or what we call EA. So it's just a 4-quarter sequence where you basically learn linear algebra, differential equations, some physics, things like that. Basically knowledge that all engineers kind of need to have. And then we also have to go through this 2-quarter sequence called DTC, which stands for Design Thinking and Communication. And essentially we spend those 2 quarters working with a client, usually in Chicago, making an actual prototype of a project with them, which is pretty cool actually. I remember my winter quarter freshman year, we worked with the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab in downtown Chicago, and we built this sort of brace to help patients with strokes stand up straighter while they're walking, so it's really cool. You get to actually test your products on actual patients, meet your clients, and go through the entire engineering design process. So those are the 2 main sequences of requirements in engineering. There's also some science requirements, math requirements, which I'd say is to be expected. But I'd say for choosing within your freshman year, everyone's going to take the EA sequence, everyone's going to take the DTC sequence. But whether about the major classes, I think that's really major dependent. I was able to start taking major classes my fall freshman year, but it's definitely a little more flexible as a computer science major. I do know some people who are biomedical engineering who weren't able to start taking major classes till a little later, but I think it really depends. So it's definitely a little more structured, but you're still going to have a lot of some space to explore your freshman year. And you have a McCormick advisor, you have your PA group, and they're super helpful with helping you pick classes, especially your freshman year.
And Mirage, take it away with the pre-med info.
Yeah, so I'm also in Weinberg. So with pre-med, so that's just a track, it's not a specific major at Northwestern. So I'm doing it within Weinberg, but I also know friends who are BME, biomedical engineering, who are doing it through the School of McCormick. So really being pre-med just means you have to take the pre-med requirements. And so being in Weinberg, first of all, when you apply to Weinberg, what happens is that, as you guys know, right, that you guys come in undecided, you have until the end of sophomore year to declare a major. I declared my neuroscience major the end of my freshman spring quarter, just so that I could get like pre-reg perks for all my major classes, which was pretty nice. And so with the pre-med classes, as Cecilia mentioned for engineering, you already have a pretty, I wouldn't say rigid schedule, but you also have classes that you need to make sure that you take by a certain time. For example, Bree and I, we have to take our Gen Chem class fall quarter, and then there's also, since it's a year sequence, you have to take it your winter quarter as well. So those classes are kind of fixed, but where you do have some leeway is choosing your freshman year seminar. And so you have to take 2 of these your freshman year. And so one, everyone takes fall quarter, and then the second one, you get automatically assigned whether you're supposed to take a winter or spring quarter. And so this freshman year seminar is for the Weinberg students, that's who your pre-A group is. So Bree and I were in the same freshman year seminar. And so you get to choose which freshman year seminar you want. And so that was really nice. And I'll talk about it later in one of the other questions. But Besides that, in terms of getting into exactly what you need to do, your major specific classes, obviously the earlier you can get prereq. So certain classes have these prerequisite courses that you should take. So for example, if you want to take the higher level neuro classes, you have to take the intro level neuro classes first. And so for this, you really want to, at least in my opinion, you want to do that as early as possible, so that way you can kind of get it out of the way and then start getting at your major level classes, especially if you are pre-med, because then you're also going to have other classes you need to take. For example, sophomore year is typically when most students take the bio sequence and the orgo sequence together. And so in terms of that, that's really, I would say that you want to do these like pre-med major classes as soon as you can. But also keep in mind that you do have some leeway. For example, I can take certain gen eds, I can take other distros. So it really allows you to explore at the same time too. If you're not completely sure on pre-med, but you still want to ensure that you take those pre-med classes, then that's completely fine. I know several people who have done that and they're doing perfectly fine. So basically, all in all is that, yes, there is certain classes that you want to take, but also there's some free room for you to explore exactly what you want to do within Weinberg.
Great. And for our next question, our audience wants to know, what do you dislike most about Northwestern and how can it improve? Emmy?
Yeah, so not to be a downer, but I think probably the thing I like the least about Northwestern is kind of the overachieving mentality. I know there's like an admissions campaign called "And Is It Our DNA," which emphasizes that Northwestern students are great at like multiple things. Like, I don't know, like I'm a world-class engineer and a clarinet player, or I cured a disease and I interviewed the president and I started 5 clubs at Northwestern. So like, I remember when the campaign was first released, everyone was really kind of upset with the expectations being placed on students to be like more than who they are. And everyone's kind of expected to be the best at everything they do. And I think it can kind of be limiting toward reaching out and trying new things that maybe you never would have thought to try before. I know a lot of students, including myself, like didn't bother joining some clubs like an a cappella or a debate team or something because they had never been involved with one before and felt like they wouldn't be good enough. So yeah, it's hard to try new things and fail when Northwestern kind of expects the best from you all the time. So in terms of improvement, I guess, obviously getting rid of those campaigns would be a start, but also I think it comes down to the student environment as well, which I think has improved a lot. Students are more open with each other about mental health struggles and stressors, or just like everyday emotions. And I think it helps to know that when you're struggling, there are a lot of people you can talk to. So fostering a student environment that's built more on like curiosity and support and open dialogue, I guess, would be the biggest thing that would help.
Yeah, I mean, those are some great points. I want to echo that for sure. I also wanted to kind of like clarify about like what Northwestern isn't and which could lead to someone disliking it. Bree mentioned the work hard, play hard. It's not the same as work hard, play hard at like a Duke or a USC or a UCLA. It's not going to party like a state school. That will happen one day a year at Dillo. The tailgates will pretty much only be frat parties. But on the other hand, you find your group, you find the people you want to go out with. I personally am not a drinker, so I go and I play board games with friends and I love it. And that's a great Friday night. Emmy mentioned that the mental health resources are improving. I think we see this on every college campus, that they're not up to par of what they should be. That the quarter system is very hard in the sense that you're going all of the time. Once you hit about week 4, you're having assessments all of the time, which is difficult. Also that it's very intense and quick in terms of the quarter system. The affluence on campus can be overwhelming at times, because I was just reading something about that. I think 60% of the students are at least upper middle class. And Northwestern is working on more initiatives to make things more accessible, but I think that's something that would be very different from a state school and is something to keep in mind. There are they're working on making more free activities, and there's lots you can do in the town, which is good. I would also say that as someone who did not participate in Greek life, sorry, I rushed for all of Greek life. I did not get a bid anywhere. That's not supposed to happen. I am a fluke, I will say. That if at times you live on North Campus your freshman year, and you want to be more social your freshman year and the end of it, it's very hard to do if you're not in Greek life if you live on North Campus and you're not an athlete. And then I would also say, but I think we see this everywhere, of the cancel culture that happens. Unfortunately, I think that's getting more and more big on campuses, but that you're seeing that there's less room for error and trying new things, like Emmy has said, because people are so afraid to step on toes and fail. That was very sad. I'm sorry. Go Cats. Alyssa.
I agree with everything everyone has said. Also, not to be a downer, but I think it's important to know these things when you're going in. And my kind of thing that I want to say is journalism specific, but I also think it relates broadly to a lot of other areas of study. And it's that I wish I had known going in to not limit my knowledge to the classroom, or to just see professors as the authority, and to also listen to the communities you're working with, and that or sometimes studying, when it comes to journalism, you're reporting on communities that often aren't your own. And I think learning with a sense of empathy, and not necessarily taking what you see in a lecture in a classroom as the ultimate authority, and continuing to have that degree of empathy as you grow, because that's just something. I went into journalism school not having any journalism experience, so everything was the authority, but I wish I had thought more about what my personal beliefs were as I went through the entire 4 years.
Also, the weather, keep in mind, we are in Chicago. Look at what the weather report would be in the winter in general. It does get very cold. The Lakeville rocks, but it also gets super cold. Okay.
So to end this part of the session on a happier note, we want to know, what was your most memorable experience at Northwestern? What stands out to you as the most special part of your NU experience thus far? So let's start with Shaylin.
All right, this is kind of hard because, again, I have 4 years to pull from, and I was trying to think of what my favorite memories were, especially because a lot of my favorite Northwestern related memories happened off campus, when I, for example, on a whim bought super cheap red-eye flight to Las Vegas to visit a friend, and we road tripped to San Diego to watch the Holiday Bowl my junior year. Or my friends visited me in Minnesota from a road trip from Illinois to go to the state fair. But I'd say one of my favorite memories on campus, directly Northwestern related, is my sophomore spring. I stage managed a show, and I'm not a theater major, but all of my friends were, and kind of pulled me in to get involved. So ended up stage managing a show, and the entire second act of the show took place on a roof. That was the set. So one day during rehearsal, we snuck up to the roof of the building that we were rehearsing in, and the director kind of had the actors go through this scene so they could get the feel of what it's would be to live these things on an actual roof. And so it was a really small cast. There's maybe 6 of us total up there, and you could see all of Michigan and the whole city and campus, and it was so pretty. It was a really nice night in spring quarter, and actually the people in that room who I met there ended up being my best friends. So now it's a super fun memory to look back on. It was crazy. We were laughing so much, a kind of weird euphoric experience to sneak up to this roof that we're actually technically weren't supposed to be doing. But yeah, so that's definitely one of my favorite memories. Just that I got to meet people and also have this crazy experience.
Yeah, so I mean, I only have 2 years to pull from, so I'm hoping that I have many more good experiences. But I'd probably say my favorite so far was probably my freshman fall, because I don't know if y'all know, but Northwestern's football team actually made it to the Big Ten championship, which was kind of exciting. And so a really generous alumni actually purchased tickets for every single Northwestern student who wanted to go to the game, and provided coach buses and sandwich meals and and like meal swipes for the stadium to go to Indianapolis to watch Northwestern face Ohio State where the Colts play. And so like this was unreal because we woke up super early in the morning. So everybody was like lined up outside of Norris, like in all of their like purple Northwestern like merch, whatever. We grabbed our sandwiches, hopped on the coach bus, 4-hour bus ride down to or over to Indianapolis. And then like before the game, we had like a bunch of tents set up, like everybody was tailgating outside. Like it was such like a fun like atmosphere and something that like honestly, like I don't know if many schools like can really experience. I mean, maybe those who have like crazy football schools, but like it was just so cool and it was completely free for all students. So like everybody was like, most people were there, and yeah, it was such a good time. We lost, but it was still really cool.
My answer will make it clear what a journalism and poli-sci nerd I am, but I spent winter quarter of this year in Washington, D.C. Medill has a campus, has a newsroom right in the Washington Post building. So if that wasn't cool enough, the whole experience was just phenomenal. But we were there during the impeachment trial, and every single student who was in this program, there were 18 of us, got to spend at least one day, probably a few, in the Senate chamber listening to the impeachment trial. In the first person, you weren't allowed to bring in a phone. It was you and a notepad and a pencil, and you look to your right and it's your favorite CNN reporter, and you look to your left and it's your favorite Washington Post reporter, and it was absolutely surreal. I sat there and I got very emotional, not because of the trial, just because I was so certain that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and here I am at 20 years old actually experiencing it. And I think all of us felt very similarly and recognized how lucky we were, and there were certainly no other college students sitting amongst us. So that for me, I'll remember that for the rest of my life.
Those were some experiences that when I think about, I want to cry out of tears of joy. Like the football, I took photos on the field because I'm a photographer for the newspaper, and I took photos on the field when we got to go to the Big Ten championships because we qualified at Iowa, and it was a breakaway win, and I cried. And also hearing my friends talk about Medill on the Hill, I also cried. Panelists, should we do the imposter syndrome question? Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So imposter syndrome was a concept that many of us heard during our first years. Discuss some of your insecurities as an incoming first year joining such a selective class.
Okay, so as a freshman, like pretty much everyone else, I really struggled with imposter syndrome a lot. I got into Northwestern early decision, and there was this weird kind of like invisible difference between like ED kids and RD kids for a while. Like somehow because of the higher ED acceptance rate, like we didn't deserve to be there. I don't know, it was kind of strange. But it also didn't help that I was never like really considered like a super smart kid in high school. Like I took a few AP classes, but I wasn't close to making top 10% or anything like that. So academically, I felt like very out of place. I remember the first day of classes freshman year, there were students in my class like debating with other kids and even with the professor, like using vocabulary I'd never heard before, like just speaking so clearly and eloquently. And I was like super intimidated by all of that. And then later, kind of like being a poli-sci major or like even just doing like humanities or social sciences in general, people always kind of view that as like easier majors. And I had like lots of kids tell me that I didn't deserve to be stressed about like an upcoming exam that I had because they were an engineering student and had like 3 tests that week or something. So as a result of all of that, I kind of suppressed a lot of my stress freshman year. And then in terms of social life, I guess, that was also difficult too, because everyone's trying to find like their best friends as quickly as possible and, you know, posting pictures of how great their life is on Instagram and how many parties they're going to and all that kind of stuff. And I didn't actually find my closest friends till the middle of my sophomore year. So in that first year, I felt like I was kind of like socializing wrong or something. But like in reality, looking back, like talking about freshman year with my friends now, we all agree that we were all struggling a lot to find friends. And I think that's kind of the most important thing to remember again, like not to be a downer, but freshman year is pretty difficult for everyone. But I think coming into your first year with that knowledge makes it a lot easier to feel confident and know that like over time you will find your place, you will find your friends. And now like I love school and I wish I could be in Evanston right now, obviously, but it like took a while to find the people that I really meshed with and to find the activities that I was really passionate about. So, you know, like don't be hard on yourself if it doesn't like click for you in the first few weeks of school or even like in the first year, because it does take a lot of time. So.
Yeah, I'm going to build off of that a little bit actually. So, I mean, I guess I also come from a smaller town, so I felt like I wasn't the top student in my high school, but I performed better than a good number of my classmates. So it was definitely shocking when I came to Northwestern to see that there were all these other people doing just as well as I was. And especially in my STEM classes, one of the biggest things for me was that this is definitely a problem in computer science, especially. A lot of your classmates are just going to be men. It was something I knew going into college would happen, but it was definitely really shocking to see that actually in person. And even in some of my engineering clubs are incredibly male, white dominated, which is definitely a little intimidating at first. And I kind of felt like at first that I couldn't really find my place in them, even though I did really want to be involved. But I think just being able to talk to people near you who are willing to support you, I think that helps you a lot. And I feel like I've been able to find my place in some of those clubs, despite some of those differences I have with the people. And not that it's necessarily a bad thing. That's I'm involved in a bunch of clubs that are very white and male dominated, but I think that it's pretty intimidating to step into that kind of space at first. And that's going to be something a lot of female STEM majors are going to experience for sure. And then also just some of the things I'd heard about other students doing was definitely kind of intimidating. Students who started their own startups when they were in high school, publish these research papers in high school, which is also really intimidating. But there's so many people at Northwestern who didn't do any of that, and I think you just need to remind yourself that there's so many people at Northwestern who are like you in that sense. So freshman year is really hard for everyone. It was definitely really hard for me, but I think once you find your friend group and find the people who you can find support in, then it's not really smooth sailing, but it's going to definitely get a lot better from there.
Yeah, so when I was entering into Northwestern, I knew absolutely nobody because nobody from my school had gotten accepted into Northwestern. So I was kind of like the only person. And now this was like more than a who do I sit with at lunch table type of problem. It was more like who do I study with, you know, who do I hang out with, who do I have these like quote unquote college experiences with. And so I definitely had a very tough time with the social aspect. And it just seemed, as Emmy mentioned, right, you'd see your friends on Instagram and like everybody's hanging out, you know, everybody's having a great time, and you're just like, wait, well, why aren't I also having that experience? And so that definitely hit hard for me. And that also, you know, from high school, it was sort of definitely easier than what I experienced at Northwestern, in which you could study, you know, like the night before, everything would be fine. And I remember my very first exam at Northwestern, general chemistry. I'm sure Bree can echo this, but that was just quite something. I got my results back and boom, 63%. I was like, well, that's it. But
30.
wait, what happened?
I got a 30.
Oh, exactly. See, like all of us were just like, it hit us hard, you know? And so that was definitely hard. Now I'm just like, great, I've never been in this position before. How do I go about this? And so it was struggling with like friends, and I was struggling with grades and everything. And luckily I had my amazing PA group. I had Bree, I had all my other friends that were definitely a great support system. But then winter quarter hit. And so winter quarter, in my experience, that's typically when everything just ramps up. The weather sucks. It's cold. You just don't want to leave your room for any reason. And also just the classes, for some reason, I just felt that they were much more difficult than they were fall quarter. And so because of all these different things, now I kind of just holed up in my dorm, and then I kind of lost touch with a lot of friendships that I had made my freshman fall quarter. And so because of this, that's one of the things that, another thing that was just mainly on me, but that was all these different things that I experienced. They were definitely, something that I wasn't expecting to. I knew maybe that, okay, at first I'll have difficulty finding friends, but in high school, I was very social. And so I was like, oh, it won't be that hard. It turned out to be very difficult. I had to put myself out there. And so now I definitely do feel like I have that solid friend group, but definitely I started out with a rough start.
So we're going to get to some rapid fire questions where we have shorter answers submitted, and that way we can go pretty quickly through them, and then you can ask us questions. Yeah, what's your favorite first year class that you took?
So this isn't just a first year class, anyone can take it, but I took it during my first year. It's Dilemmas of American Power with Professor Peter Slevin. It's a journalism international studies crossover course, so it felt like it was tailor-made for me, and it's just so thought-provoking. Professor Slevin is an absolute class act. Yeah, so if you get a chance to take that, would recommend.
Mine was actually my first year seminar with Mirage. So mental health diagnosis and treatment with Dr. Ben Gorvine. He's just like the nicest human being in the world. He took us to Chicago for dinner. Like, love that man.
Yeah, so mine was actually the same class as Bree, the mental health diagnoses and treatment class, because Professor Benjamin Gorvine is honestly so nice. He cares so much about you. And I remember even when we had to submit our final exam for that class, he actually invited us to his in-house residential living. So basically he's a residential faculty member, which if you guys don't know, he's a resident of a certain dorm. And so he was the resident of, I believe, Shepherd or Willard. I think it was Willard, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, Willard, awesome. And so he invited us all to his place, and he catered tacos for us all, and it was just great. We were peer reviewing each other's papers. Really, everybody was just eating the tacos, stroking his cat, and it was just an amazing time. And so that was just amazing. He's truly a great person.
All right. Mine is a class that a lot of computer science majors normally take their sophomore year, but I messed up my schedule a bit my freshman year and ended up taking this my freshman year. Very unpopular opinion, but CS 212, which is the full title is mathematical. Basically, it's a math CS class, and it was really the class that got me to think that I really want to also pursue math besides computer science.
Okay, I'm like sensing a theme of that. We all just liked the ones, but we had the nicest professors. And similarly, I took Law and Society freshman fall, which was like a legal studies and sociology crossover. Almost convinced me I wanted to be a legal studies major because it just like talked about the reasons why people obey laws and like how, like what the limits of that are. And our professor held office hours in the Celtic Knot, which is like an Irish pub in town, and like bought us food, and it was amazing. Like that was like the first class I had at Northwestern, and it was great. So
my favorite class was from freshman spring. It was my first Middle Eastern Studies class. It was called Media and Politics in Post-Revolutionary Iran, I think. Again, I really loved the professor. The class was really small. It was like 8 people. So it was kind of just a laid back like discussion where we would just come in and kind of talk about the readings more low key. Yeah, and I kind of like built up my confidence to talk in class a lot and just get to know the professor a little bit better. So yeah.
What is everyone's favorite place to study on campus?
Okay, so when I first thought about this question, like I originally was gonna be like, oh, Deering Library, like gorgeous library. But then I thought about it and I was like, I love studying wherever I'm living. And I lived in Bob my freshman year. I would go to the Bob Lounge all the time. And then this year I live in my sorority house and I literally live in my living room because just like everybody's around, like you can kind of chat, hang out. but also get your work done. So it's a good time.
I'm a huge coffee shop gal, so my answer is wherever I can get coffee. As I said kind of at the beginning, when people are filtering in, I really like Norris, which is our student center, in between my classes, or basically any of the coffee shops in Evanston. I just like to be around people when I'm studying, so I like that environment.
I'm someone who really needs quiet when I'm hardcore studying, so it's either my room if I can't find anywhere else, or Stacks, which is a place in the library that's like up amongst the books where you can have privacy and it's quiet.
My favorite is probably Unicorn Cafe, which is like this small little kind of artsy coffee shop in downtown Evanston. I love the owner. I like talk to her all the time, but I also really like Deering if you want to feel like Harry Potter a little bit. And then Norris, yeah, there's always like an endless supply of like coffee and tea, and you usually see like 10 people, you know, just like walking in, so that's kind of fun too.
Realistically, I'm studying in mud most of the time, which is the engineering library. Great study rooms, private study rooms in there, but when I have more of a choice, I try to study in Deering, which is the big library that they advertised is like the library from Hogwarts. I am also a big coffee shop person. I personally really love Collectivo in downtown Evanston. Yeah, I really miss going there.
Yeah, and so I actually love studying in my room, so wherever I am staying. So my freshman year, it was Ayers, and then this year, before we all got kicked off of campus, was in Shepherd. And so I just love being in my room because I can be super comfortable there. I have all my snacks right next to me that my mom brings me. And so I love studying in my room.
And what is your biggest regret in college so far? I would say taking math my freshman year fall quarter, because I didn't need to take it. I could take it in a different class. Or not advocating for myself enough, because there are advisors and they're there for you if you reach out to them.
Wait, sorry, what was the question?
What's your biggest regret?
Oh, okay, got it. Sorry. Yeah, so my biggest regret would be kind of holding up my winter quarter, how I briefly mentioned. And so because of that, I didn't really branch out as much as I should have. So that was definitely one of my bigger regrets here on campus.
I say one of my.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. You can go.
I guess my biggest regret would be like thinking that I had to stick with the major that I like came in with, because I was, like I said before, I was a neuroscience major, and like I found it difficult for me to just like be like, oh, like I took a year of, you know, neuroscience classes, like I can't switch now, but like I did in the middle of my sophomore year. I'm psychology and communications now, and I love it. So just be open to new majors and new experiences.
I think for me, it's just overcommitting to things my winter quarter freshman year. Yeah, I was definitely involved in too many clubs and just projects that quarter, and it was really overwhelming. And also, I had a pretty heavy course load that quarter, so I think that quarter really taught me what I should be doing and what I should not be doing later in college. But yeah, I definitely regret doing all the things I did that quarter.
Kind of like what Bree said, I think my regret is kind of sticking to what I had majored in, because I declared my major in winter quarter freshman year, I think, and I just kind of like stayed with that and didn't really branch out much. And now that I'm a senior, I had a lot of like free time to take kind of interesting classes. So I took a psych class on mental illness last quarter, and I actually really loved it. And now looking back, I kind of wish I had like taken more classes in psych, or even just like neuroscience or something very random that I had never really thought about. Yeah.
My regret is not moving off campus earlier. I'm on significant financial aid, so I thought I wouldn't be able to afford it, but living off campus as soon as you can, so that would be junior year, it's actually way cheaper.
And then my regret would be coming into college, like thinking I knew everything, like about myself or like what I wanted to do. Like many people, I actually switched my major 5 times in the first year of 2 years of college. But I was like so set in like what I believed in, like what I thought I knew about the world. And I wish I'd like been a little bit more open-minded and like a little less loud my freshman fall.
Those are some great points, and that concludes our prepared questions. We know that we weren't able to answer everything that you guys submitted, but we tried to include the ones that were most requested. If I'm sure you guys have plenty of questions, so feel free to use raise your hand feature, or if you can also drop the question, excuse me, in the group chat. Otherwise, you could message one of the moderators, so Joey or myself, and we can anonymously use it. And then to be respectful, please stay muted if you're not. Yeah, Han.
Sick. Okay, so the housing portal is out. So I was wondering, what dorms should we avoid? Are there any like specifically really bad ones?
So it depends on what you're studying. So if you're studying, you probably want proximity to class. I will write down my personal ranking of the dorms in the chat.
Okay.
But while Mirage seemed to have feedback, so Mirage should respond while I rank.
Okay, Han, do you have any idea what class, what major you were interested in? If not, that's completely fine.
Right now I'm econ, but I'll probably switch, maybe like SESP or something like that.
SESP, okay, so I actually don't know where any of those classes are, but I'll just give you the breakdown of what dorms I think would be good to avoid if you're living North or South Campus. So North Campus, I know Bree lived in Bob her freshman year, but Bob has its own interesting sort of stories. There's my friend had mold in her room. It just random times it smells really weird. Sometimes you find weird things in the hallways that you wish you hadn't. And so, it's college, college kids being college kids, I guess you can put it. And so in terms of that, my friend would complain a lot about living there. So that's just my experience. Other people have had good experiences in Bob, but typically you want to, in my experience, you want to avoid that. And so the dorms you really want to be in, I guess more to focus on, because there's not really that many dorms that you don't want to be in, but rather the dorms North Campus you want to be in is Lincoln. Lincoln is really nice. It has suite style dorms. And so what this means is that you'd have a group of 4, and each person would have their own room with a shared like living space. So this would be like a small bathroom, like thinking of a small kitchenette, and then maybe a little bit more extra room like that's in the shared area. And so that's a really nice place. Slivka is also nice, and so is Ayers, but Lincoln is definitely the best over in North Campus. And then South Campus, the hype that I found is really around Shepherd because its bathrooms are really nice, and so that's what people have said. But in terms of dorm space, I mean it's fine. There's nothing that I have found that I want to complain about. But yeah, North Campus is definitely you wanna try to get Lincoln.
Okay, and as a follow-up, so I've heard some people say that the North-South campus divide is really significant, but then I've also heard other people say that it's not really that bad. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so
Okay, yeah, okay. I'll actually butt in because I'm an engineer, so all my classes are up north. So I actually live south, and I've lived south both years I've been at Northwestern, and I literally don't regret it at all. I can speak a little bit about the res college system. I live in a res college, which is a dorm that's based off some sort of theme, and res colleges will usually have a bit of a stronger sense of community than the regular residence halls are. And so I did not choose to get put into my res college my freshman year, but I chose to stay in there because I love the people and I didn't want to live anywhere else. Then again, not everybody's looking for that community, so that just depends. But I am an engineer who lives on South Campus, and I willingly am choosing to live on South Campus. So I'd say there's not really a divide. I know a lot of other engineers who also live South Campus, so I don't think that divide is as prevalent as you may think it is.
Just to give a little bit of like a contrasting opinion on like the dorm life, whatever. So like one of the first things that I was told when I went on my admitted students visit was like, choose the dorm that you want to live in and don't think about the location, because, and like I found for me for that to hold true, because like where you live is like where you're spending most of your time. It's where like you meet your first friends, like it's where, you know, your programming is happening. Like every dorm has all different types of programming. In Bob, we had this thing called snack chat. Every Wednesday everybody would meet up in the Bob lounge and eat some snacks. So we had chocolate covered strawberries and things. It was so good. So yeah, choose where you want to live. And also just to like, just because I love Bob so much, it really, like, I loved it. Like I would not have lived anywhere else for me personally. It's one of the largest like freshman dorms. It was really social, and you know, I loved my room. It may not have been like Lincoln style, but I do think it's like a really good experience, and it's like your stereotypical like freshman dorm style, but it's not for everybody, so just keep that in mind. I just want to say there is good things about Bob, even though it does get a lot of hate sometimes.
All right, thank you.
Should we do the question about getting internships?
Yeah.
Joey.
Yeah. Hi, Bonnie. I know Bonnie. So, yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on what your major is. It's going to vary circumstantially, depending on what you study and what your trajectory is and what your goals are. I can speak to journalism. Obviously, I've been extraordinarily lucky. I've had an internship every summer. I've done one during the school year, and that is something that I would like to tout about Northwestern, is the proximity to Chicago and all of the incredible news outlets that Chicago has to offer. So I know a lot of Medill students who take advantage of that and choose to do an internship part-time during the school year on top of their journalism residency, which is when Medill pairs you with a publication or a journalism outlet or a media outlet, and more broadly, and you go and spend a full quarter there. While you're still on campus, you can also definitely take advantage of the media landscape in Chicago. Medill is really helpful. It has its own career services, so they're specialized in journalism in helping you find internships there. I found that what's been most helpful is older students who had these internships prior to me and who were able to tell me about their experiences and perhaps even put in a good word. And I know I've done that for students who are younger than me. So there really is a Medill mafia, as we call it, and we look out for one another. And I've had a wonderful experience at every single internship I've had. I've had a variety of them on air, behind the scenes, producing. So Medill wants you to absolutely make the most out of those experiences, but it's also up to you to go in search of them.
Yeah, I can also speak to internships. I just also want to emphasize something that I was really insecure about was internships, because I felt like everyone had them right away. I'd just like to say, as an incoming, like, first year, after your first year, I did not have an internship, not a big deal. Totally, like, that is something that I think a lot of people stress out about a lot, but if you are looking, definitely a good way to spend a summer if you are looking. Something I found super useful is, like, through your classes, like through faculty, especially as you get more into your major classes, like we would have guest speakers in some of my classes that were kind of had connections in industries that I wanted to go into that I used. I also applied for an internship grant after my junior year, so last summer, and ended up getting a portion of money from Northwestern, so I was able to take an unpaid internship, and they helped me with my search there. Like, I had a counselor who helped me find an internship through that. And then also something I would say is that, like, the most valuable thing I've learned about internships is, like, truly just reach out. Both of my internships were found because I just emailed a person at the business and said, hi, I would like to intern. Do you have any openings? And actually, that's how I got, like I said, both of my 2 internships. And then I had a post-grad internship that maybe might be happening now, that I found through like graduated students through Northwestern, but also through my on-campus job. I had a work-study job in athletics, and there's kind of like a pipeline between like Northwestern athletics communications and the Cubs, so I actually ended up with an internship there, kind of like through, like, they sometimes only advertise to Northwestern, so I'd say there's definitely like a ton of avenues that you can take advantage of, like your personal connections, the career offices, professors and guest speakers, coworkers, older students, basically everyone at your disposal, normally super happy to help. Like a lot of people, that's what their job is. And then also don't be afraid to just like reach out and ask.
I think the most important thing is just to be aware of the resources. They're abundant. Northwestern has so many. It sometimes feels overwhelming and never ending, but what a miraculous thing to have. And your time there is finite. So going and taking the initiative and finding someone who's had an internship you want, or a professor who's worked at the business where you want to be, or going to career services in Medill, taking advantage of that journalism residency and letting Medill help you be where you want to be is just the best thing you can do for yourself.
Yeah, and like kind of obviously a little bit different than internships, but there's also a lot of research opportunities if that's more of your forte. So like I didn't do anything my freshman year. I genuinely was like, I'm gonna focus on figuring my life out and like just experiencing college before I start like diving into like career advancement. But then my sophomore year, once I decided I was a psychology major, I actually decided I wanted to potentially like work in a lab. So literally I just went on Northwestern's undergraduate research like directory of like labs that were looking for research assistants. And one of the first ones that I contacted, it's called the Lifespan and Development Lab. It's in SFP. Basically gave me a spot to like go talk to them, and then they gave me a position as a research assistant, which is really cool. And then now to further that, I actually applied to this program. It's called the Undergraduate Research Grant Program. So there's actually ones for during the year, the academic year, and also during the summer. So I was awarded a summer undergraduate research grant to do a project with my lab for this upcoming summer. So, and you get paid. It's a really great experience. And so it really goes to show you that you really just got to like reach out, go talk to a professor if you're interested in their work. And it really goes a long way.
And you can definitely, I think Bree made an excellent point about research as an undergrad. I have been astounded in comparison to universities where my friends go. Like, for example, I have a friend at Harvard, and we talk about the opportunities to do research, and Northwestern is huge on getting students involved. I will say that I have done 3 different research grants, had a research grant to do research in Africa, in Ghana, that paid for my flight. And so it's just super helpful, and they can help you with whatever. Andrea.
So has anyone studied abroad? And if so, like what was that experience like?
Mirage, why don't you start?
Okay, awesome. So I actually studied abroad through this program called GESI. And so through that, I went to Uganda. And so I did this over the summer of my freshman year. And so that study abroad experience was truly amazing because I feel that Northwestern does a really good job at structuring their study abroad programs, at least in my experience. And so what would happen is that they, get you up to speed. They tell you, they basically prepare you for what it's going to be like in the country or wherever you're going abroad. And so this happens for like a week or so through the program that I did at least. And so they prep you for a week and then you study abroad. And just to preface, being like pre-med and, needing to get all these shadowing hours, needing to volunteer, all that stuff. I thought it wouldn't be possible to study abroad, but I found time, and Northwestern really does help you with that. And so I was able to study abroad, went to Uganda, one of the best experiences of my life, because it's just, you get so immersed in the culture, is because the way our program worked, you actually stayed with a family there. It's not like you were staying in a hotel or anything. No, you stayed with the family. So it was really this like 1 on like 4 experience, right? Like 1 of you and then 4 of them. And so it was great learning about them. They even taught you the local language, which I can still speak a little to this day. And so because of that, it was an amazing, like terrific experience. It was great.
also, if you don't want to study abroad for a whole quarter or a whole summer, for me personally, I knew I wanted to do the Medill on the Hill DC program, and I didn't want to sacrifice too much time on campus because Evanston is the most spectacular place in the world. And I know I'm starting to sound like a Medill mascot, but I really do love it that much. Medill has opportunities where you can study for shorter amounts of time. So I was able to go on a spring break reporting trip to Israel last year, and you take a class that prepares you how to be culturally sensitive and culturally aware in a new place, and B, how to act like an international correspondent, how to use translators and fixers, how to go about finding sources when you don't speak the same language, sort of overcoming those barriers. And then you do all this reporting, you immerse yourself in this place, albeit for a short amount of time, but you get to do the touristy things, and you get to really be on the ground reporting, and then you come back and put all your work together. And, very few people have the opportunity to go and do that before graduating college. And then there are other reporting abroad grants you can get, and those are limited to Medill, but there are also short-term opportunities. I was supposed to go to Poland over spring break this year. Obviously that didn't happen, but hopefully they'll reschedule that. And you just have to look for them. There are opportunities everywhere to do things like that.
Yeah. Sorry.
I would say that they also, no, I mean, go ahead. I just want to address that there is significant financial aid for studying abroad that you can go and get if you need it. I know that Northwestern is very committed to making sure students can afford to go. And I think that's really important to note. And that also keeping in mind when you go, there are certain programs that only happen like during a certain part of the year. Yeah, and then Emmy.
I was just going to say there's also, like, as people were saying, some more like short-term opportunities for study abroad if you don't want to do like a quarter-long or even like a year-long experience. I did like a 2-week program through Northwestern Hillel, even though I'm not Jewish, but it was a full, like, all expenses paid for trip to Israel with about like 15 other Northwestern students. And it was Israel and Palestine. We learned about like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But yeah, it was a really great experience being with Northwestern students and just having the experience of like getting to know people at Hillel, which was an organization I had never been involved in. Yeah.
So my abroad experience was fabulous. I went to Ghana. I was there for 2 months. I came home early because of the coronavirus. I was very fortunate because the program in specific I did was Northwestern affiliated, but not done by Northwestern. So my grades didn't matter. They wouldn't have mattered anyway because I was doing a pass, no pass thing. And that, yes, Bree, that's a great point that they do go during their junior year. And there are programs that go and fit that. And then just Emmy brought up an excellent point. In terms of religious institutions, I think that Northwestern has a really good job in terms of like campus life of different places that are very welcoming. I would also say that they're really good in terms of food, like Hillel always has food. I know that the Christian ministry has food all the time too. And utilize your food resources on campus because that's a huge thing. There's so many events.
Any other questions?
So on the freshman and sophomore meal plan, does that mean we can like eat as much of anything we want anywhere at any time?
At the dining halls, if they're open, yes. And unlimited swipes, yes.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh, okay. Is there still like is there like late night dining as well that you can go in the late hours of the night?
Not at every dining hall, but at specified ones.
And it's best to be north for that in general because there's only one south, and okay. the hours are different. But I can show you online as well if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and then one. Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
Okay,
No,
yeah. So one trick that I really liked was, I mean, freshman year you have to stay on the unlimited dining plan that's mandatory, but sophomore year you do have the option to choose the base 14. And in terms of cost, I think it's like $50 cheaper or so. but you really get a sense of how often you go to the dining halls based off of your freshman year. So I would never eat breakfast, just because I was never much of a morning person. So I wouldn't eat the breakfast at the dorm, and so at the dining hall, sorry. And so I would only really have lunch and dinner there, so I'd only use it twice a week. And so the base 14 gives you 14 swipes a week, and you still get to do the meal exchange program, which I don't know how much you know about that, but basically what it is that you get 2 swipes per week that you get to use at select locations. And so for example, one of the popular locations is Mod Pizza. So you can go there and use one of those swipes instead of using, let's say, your dining dollars or actual cash that you want to use. So that's a good alternative. And with the base 14, you also get 225 dining dollars, whereas on the unlimited, you only get 125. This is per quarter, by the way. So based off of that, it's like you can eat a lot more outside of the dining halls if that's what you're looking towards.
And there are accessible grocery stores too.
Which are all on dining dollars as well, or?
No, the dining
No,
dollars
in
are not
Evanston.
working at grocery stores, but in Evanston, sorry.
Maybe to wrap it up, if no other questions pop up, but going off of that, we can do one more rapid fire round. And if all the panelists want to say your favorite place to eat on campus or in Evanston, we can do that.
There is a fabulous Senegalese place that's on Howard, that's on the very edge of Evanston, and they have excellent food, and they have some Ethiopian food there, and it's just warm and delicious.
I'm gonna be really, this is like a basic Northwestern answer, but Tomate is this like Mexican place that's North Campus, and they have like really good tres leches cake, which is my favorite cake, and I've like celebrated every big event of the past 2 years by buying myself Tomate, so.
I really like Chicken Shack, great fried chicken, open late, pretty inexpensive.
I like this place called Tapas Barcelona. It's just like this tapas place, but they have the best staff there. Like the customer service is like unreal. So nice.
I really like Cozy Noodles. They have really good like comfort food, kind of like pretty much all Asian food, I'm pretty sure, but it's also bring your own beer, wine, which is nice if you're over 21, I guess, but yeah.
I really like 10Q. It's basically a Korean fried chicken restaurant in downtown Evanston. It's super good. Highly recommend.
Yeah, and I love CM Splendor. It's a little bit further in downtown Evanston. I'd say about like an 8-minute walk off campus. And so CM Splendor, I love Thai food, and this has been my go-to Thai place. It makes my stomach absolutely hurt after, but it is so worth it in the moment, eating their pad see ew, eating their like red curry. It's definitely highly recommend eating there. So basically there's a lot of food options around campus.
I'm a huge brunch person, so there's a fairly new place that opened last year, my sophomore year, called Frida's, and it's right off campus, and it's delicious, and they have this whipped cream, and it's like nothing I've ever tasted before. But they also have great salads, so it's for everyone. And Capital, which is a few blocks off campus, is a fabulous work environment, so you can go, and they have great soups and coffees, and they have the best chocolate chai tea latte you could ever imagine, which I know is a little bit basic, but it's really, really good. I see there is another question about what to do in Evanston. And also I think you can bear in mind that Chicago's a half-hour train ride away if you get on the Purple Line Express, so you don't have to limit yourself to Evanston by any means, but Evanston's a beautiful college town with plenty to do, but your options are open. Who is answering that? Do you want to jump in? Allison?
Yeah, I think there's tons to do in Evanston. I have interned at a place in Evanston too. There are various shops. Evanston as a whole, as a community, it's very progressive. It's the first community in all of the United States that has passed fund for reparations. There's reparations that comes from the marijuana tax. And so, but various things, great restaurants, great community. When you're walking to the football stadium, there are lots of houses around there. You see that the community is pretty friendly because also it brings in a lot of revenue. Northwestern does not pay taxes on property, but that's something that we could tell you more about. Evanston as a whole is very pretty. I encourage you to go and look on Google Maps and do Street View, and look on campus, because that's a great way of seeing things. Yeah, but it's very accessible to go off campus, and I think that's really a very nice respite from things. I like to do that during reading week, which is the week right before finals. Also because I have like adult friends who I've met in the community in Evanston, and that's really nice because I can talk to them about stuff. And there are lots of dogs to walk. I walk 5 different dogs in the Evanston community, and I babysit for them, and it's amazing.
And also take advantage of all the free entertainment Northwestern has to offer. I go see theater, and it's free or $5 every single weekend. A, because I have friends who are in the productions or directing or doing the costumes, but B, it is quality entertainment. It's fabulous. And if you don't want to spend $100 on a ticket to go into Chicago, which the theater scene in Chicago is outstanding, but there's also, you have the future of Broadway right on your campus. So don't disregard that. We also have a free art museum that I don't think people realize exists, and it's fabulous. And they have permanent exhibits, and they have temporary exhibits, and they're all really, really engaging and informative and beautiful. It's called The Block. And go kayaking, if you take one thing away from this.
So I think, are we okay to wrap it up?
Yeah, looks like it.
I'm gonna leave my phone number in the chat. So if you need to talk to me about things, I can do a phone call. I'm also telling you this, I have tons of free time because the Ghana courses aren't really a thing. Anyway, yes, we really appreciate you guys listening. It's awesome. And we hope that things are not stressful and that you have a wonderful experience picking school. You guys deserve the best. Yeah.
Thanks so much.